Welcome to the Drive-By Entrepreneur Podcast, which exists to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. I'm John Frank, fellow entrepreneur and the owner of Third Road Management. And with this podcast, we will connect with a variety of experienced and dynamic individuals to shed some light on both the art and science of entrepreneurship. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First, my very own Third Road Management, a company that brings fractional CFO services to small and mid-sized organizations by revolutionizing the CFO suite. We'd also like to thank Two Hound Red, a brewery and restaurant located in Glen Ellen, Illinois, that is focused on creating classic, innovative beer and food. And finally, we'd like to thank NWC Media, which provides inbound marketing technology, project workflow management, and efficiency consulting to organizations of varied sizes, who is also the producer of the Drive-By Entrepreneur Podcast. All right, George Petro, welcome to the Drive-By Entrepreneur Podcast by Third Road Management. Appreciate you coming here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's going to be a blast. Okay, so I start out each episode, it's relatively new. So I start out each episode just talking a little bit about what the podcast is, who's it for, so on and so forth. So the best way to do that is to say our mission statement is that the Drive-By Entrepreneur Podcast exists to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. So guests on our show have been entrepreneurs themselves. They've been subject matter experts in certain areas. And the whole idea is to, find inspiration, find, things that are valuable that people can take away and apply to their own context and just have fun conversations. I'm kind of a long form podcast enthusiast. And so I said, why not combine a couple of things that I enjoy in what we're doing here today. So,
Awesome.
Great. Well, thankful for you being here. Why don't you, in your own words, tell me a little bit more about, who you are, what you do, and what you love about it. And I think that'll be a good way to kick things off.
Awesome. Okay, so tell me about me and what I do. Okay, so my name is George Petro, and I'm president of Mechanix Incorporated, and we are manufacturers and creators of arcade video games.
Very cool.
It is cool.
Uh,
Like the big kind.
yeah.
Yes, they still exist.
Yes.
That's usually the question I get when I say something about what I do.
Yes, and
They still make those?
Yes, and I've seen them. I think we had one of our children's birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese. The picture that I sent you was from Chuck E. Cheese.
That's where that came from?
Yeah. And then
it was like X snowboard game or something.
I can't, whatever it was, yeah. And then the other time, I think I was at Dave & Buster's a couple years back or whatever, and I sent you a picture back then. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. And I know you've been sort of associated with, a number of games over the years or whatever, and I know a couple of them. But what are some of the ones that people might know if they, looked it up or whatever?
Right. So what I tell everybody, my biggest claim to fame, probably from my earlier career, is I am a player in NBA Jam. So
yeah, I remember that one.
So you can play me if you want. A very young version of me with much darker hair. So I was part of Midway in the 90s, but even before that, I worked at a company called Williams Electronics, and they're Chicago based.
Okay.
And they were a maker of video games. Probably the games that I played as a kid were made by this company called Williams Electronics. So I started working there as a summer job, ended up there after college, and then we purchased the assets of Valley Midway at the same year the Cubs got lights, 1988.
Okay.
And we ended up renaming our department Midway. So as much as we made Midway games, which were, like Terminator 2, Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, all of those games, it was really Williams' DNA that was making those games.
Yeah, I'm sure there's entire teams of people that are involved with the, development process of every game and stuff.
Back then, though, not so much.
Really?
It was really, a couple guys, artist, sound guy. The games were much different back then, and the technology was different and not readily available. So we really didn't have the money to have lots of people having these expensive development systems. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a very much different time.
Well, I know that for people sort of my age, like NBA Jam is probably like the most iconic, I would say, like game of
Yeah,
like my age
it
group's,
was a big one, definitely.
era.
Yeah,
You
def-
know, that he's on fire, all
yeah.
that stuff.
It's like you can do that, right?
So you need
Why
a cheat
not?
code to play George Petro in
You
NBA
just
Jam?
need my initials and my birthday.
Uh-oh. All right. Well, maybe we'll put that in the
Put
put
that
that in the
put
comments
that in the
section.
liner notes.
Yeah, there you go. Um, so you touched a little bit on this, but thematically for the day, you and I have had a brief conversation
Sure.
from a while back, which is why I kind of remembered some of these things. But I thought of like three specific areas that I thought would be great to tap into here. Number one is pursuing what you love. Um, everybody knows the phrase, if you do what you love,
Right.
you'll never work a day in your life, kind of thing. And I know that was part of your story, which you've already hit on a little bit, which was
Yeah.
being in school and starting. So we'll start with that one, but then the second one is staying curious, right? Because you've been doing what you do for a long period of time. And anybody, I mean, I'm not like a video game enthusiast now, but it's obvious to see how much things have evolved over the
Right.
course of time. And so if you're any sort of creative person, if you're an engineer, if you're whatever, you have to stay continuously curious about
Yeah.
what you do. So anyway, I want to hit on that. And then the last piece, leading through challenging times. And, I know you and I have talked about that too, especially the last couple of years, but that's probably not the first time that you've led through some disruption
Right.
in
Yeah.
the marketplace.
For what, either by my own doing or
Yeah,
you
right.
never know.
Right, yeah.
It could be COVID or it could be, just some dumb
Yep,
decisions. But
absolutely. All right, so let's start first with pursuing what you love,
mhm.
and I don't even remember this story totally exactly, but I know it involved you just starting to work on like video games, like as a student, right?
Yeah, as a kid, I think kind of combining the thinking about why I'm curious. I can think back specifically to when I was growing up. I mean, I'm old enough that I saw the moon landing like live, on TV and that kind of stuff. So I loved technology, just what made that happen, and was really curious. Although I wasn't like a space nut
Yeah.
growing up. In fact, my oldest brother used to love to watch Star Trek, and I hated it because it kind of was on at the same time as Gilligan's Island, and I was more of a Gilligan's Island guy than
Okay.
Star Trek. So, and I only say that because I was growing up during the '70s, Star Wars came out,
Mm.
and my oldest brother had come home from college, and he's like, "Hey, let's go see Star Wars." And all I could think was Star Trek, and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna like that movie. Like I was not down for that, and
Yep.
he took me, and it like as all of us that had seen the movie, it just blew my mind. And I think video games were really like an extension of, that kind of thing. It's like, it's different, it's imaginative, and seeing video games come out after sort of when Star Wars came out, it just kind of tied into that same world. It's like,
Yep.
oh, you could be in space, you're shooting things, there's aliens. It was really cool. And it was also a TV set doing something that you never thought a TV set could do.
Right.
So that was that for me, and my curious mind was, how exactly do you get pong paddles on a TV and
Yeah.
get the ball to bounce back and forth rather than like Captain Kangaroo or something like that?
Mm.
So I was that really drove me early on, and I was fortunate enough to have a father that was involved in the architectural and civil engineering realm, and he did a lot of commercial building back in the town I grew up in. And one of the jobs he got at the end of the '70s was designing an arcade game room for some friends they were going to start up this game room, right?
Yep.
And prior to that, game rooms were kind of seedy places. It was like either the bus station or something like that. And
Bowling alley.
bowling alley
Yeah.
corner, that kind of thing. But they were going to design, like they're going to put some real money into it and design a nice room because video games were becoming very, very popular. Uh, Pinball was kind of waning, video was high, and I used to love to watch the jobs he was working on, and this one, of course, I was particularly interested in,
Mm.
and was there the night they brought the games in. So
Mm.
I had no idea that anybody made these games, just never really thought about it. And, all these games came in boxes and off a truck. And I'm like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
Where are these games coming from? Who does this? And they actually opened one of the boxes and we got a chance to see in the back of the game and play the game. And it was just, for me, it was like, okay, curiosity overdrive, because you've got this really cool, like, presence on screen, but you've got these little green boards with black chips on them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really get all this. So that really set me on a course of like, I need to figure this out. I just needed to figure it out. It was driving me crazy, like how this happened. And there was no Google. You
Yep.
couldn't. There was little research, so you had to go to the library. You had to ask people questions, like people that you thought might know the answer. So that was really what drove me early on. And I was probably, I guess I was maybe either an eighth grader or a freshman in high school at that
Okay.
time.
Yeah, and then that curiosity must have continued because I think you said when you went to school in college,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't you weren't going to college to pursue, uh, you know, staying in that industry or anything like that. As far like, or at
Well,
least not initially, or
originally my goal was to be a doctor. Like
okay,
I
yeah,
wanted to go in the medical field. I literally took 4 years of Latin in high school because I was like, okay, you need Latin to be in the to pass everything to get into medical school. And I took all the biology and all that stuff. And video games, computers and video games literally changed all that. Like you know, there was a whole computer thing happening at the same time. Like the Apple II had come out,
hmm
where you could take the top off it and look in. So all that was happening at the time that I was just kind of getting into high school. But back to like, okay, how do I learn about how video games work? Well, when the arcade opened, there was this guy that they hired that had a cool toolbox that his job was to fix the video game. So I just started following him around and, like pestering him with questions. And I'm sure he wanted to like, just get rid of me, but he was a really nice guy. And he taught me all he knew about like how he fixes the games, kind of about electronics and all that kind of stuff. And eventually he left. And at the game room, again, I was pretty young, and I know the owner had definitely a minimum age of employment
hmm
because she didn't want any kids working at the arcade because it'd be like letting a kid in a candy store.
yeah,
So you had to be at least like, I don't know, it was like 21 in her mind. And here I am like 13 or 14 years old. And I'm following this guy around, and then he quit, and then they hired another tech who was just not a great tech, like kind of a bozo, kind of lazy, didn't really care about the games working. And so I told the manager, I'm like, dude, I can fix those games.
yeah,
I know how to keep them running. So he goes, good, you can keep running, go for it. I'll give you a roll of tokens for every game you fix. So I was like, deal.
sweet,
Sweet. Yeah. Now I can buy all the chicken McNuggets I want with my
yeah,
other money. So that's how I really got into it. And there literally came this one point where the owner found out that I was the one fixing the games, and she lost her mind. Like, you can't have him, fixing those games. They cost a lot of money. He'll just break them. And he's like, no, you don't understand. He's the one keeping them working. This other guy's breaking everything.
hmm,
So they eventually fired that guy and hired me. I think I just did I have my driver's license at the time? I can't remember. I think I might have had to get a ride, or ride my bike, but I got the job as the tech at the arcade. So I figured, I'm rolling now.
yeah,
So
big time,
so that was kind of my start into it, and I was definitely out over my skis. Like, I was hoping that I could get problem solved, but I had confidence. It was a
yeah,
weird confidence, right? I mean, I think we all go through life when you're in the zone where you are doing well, you have confidence that you can overcome problems. And I
right.
and I even had that confidence as a young person. Like, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I felt I could do it, if that makes sense. Or I
Right.
felt I could find the answer somehow. I would usually stop at nothing to find the answer at that point.
Yeah, so there's two parts there. It's like you love the video game aspect of it, but you just seem like you're a curious learner and
Yeah.
almost like it's almost like you obsess on it, right? Like meaning like some people might uh pick up the guitar and then just be like, I've got to learn how to play the guitar and be the
Right.
best guitarist. And, I just like, I have to figure this thing out. So it sounds like a combination of two things that, you have just in you. One
Yeah.
is the love, for the games or whatever, but then the other one is just like this tenacity with the problem solving.
Yeah, and I don't know if the obsession part comes because of the love of it. I don't know,
Yeah.
like I wouldn't obsess over cooking. Like, I love to eat, but I'm not, like my wife loves to cook. She loves it. I don't obsess, I don't lose sleep over like how to prepare something. But if it's a problem, a technical problem that needs to be solved, I can't get away from it, right? It's just like clicking back there like
Yep.
all the time. It was really funny when I was younger, even before this. I remember when my one brother got married, everybody was coming to town. He was getting married in our town. This is back when did things from your house, like church house. That was kind of that was the realm, church basement.
Yep.
You didn't do destination weddings or anything like this. And all of our family was coming to our house from out of town. And, there had been this huge run up, everybody getting everything ready. And I remember my grandparents were the first people to arrive. And I had, was sitting out on the back porch with my grandpa, and I had left a box. There was a box on the porch that I was supposed to like get into the garage before everybody came, and it was full of parts of a garbage disposal. Like our garbage disposal had broke. The guy who fixed it took it out and left it in a box. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna figure out this garbage. This garbage disposal is mysterious and dangerous, and I need to figure this thing out. So
Wow.
I'm like, I'm keeping these parts so I could like dissect this garbage disposal. And my grandpa just like, he like does this. He looks in the box and he kind of picks up some of the stuff and he goes, "You just need to know how it ticks, don't you?" And I go, "Yep." He had it like, and then later down in my life, after my grandpa had passed away, I was like down in his shop at his house, and I found these business cards that he was actually in the coin machine business
Huh.
that I had never known about. Like he ran jukeboxes, like he up in upstate New York, he was taking jukeboxes to bars or restaurants and but fixing those mechanisms and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So he was actually in the business I'm in, but long before me.
Wow.
But he totally picked it out right away. He's just
Yeah.
like, I get it. I get it.
So you mentioned that so you're in high school, let's say at this
Yeah,
point in time,
definitely.
and then when you went to college, you thought, kind of the pre-med route, right?
This was so in high school I was thinking the pre-med route.
Okay, got it.
So remember during high school, so I got this job. And then there's another part to the story. So I still hadn't figured out how these games were made. Like I figured out how they worked enough to fix them,
Right.
but I didn't get to the point of how they're made. And at one point, the people, after the owner of the arcade accepted me for who I was and started to lean on me and allowed me to make decisions, at one point, I think this was my senior year of high school. I'd been there a couple years. Our arcade became a test location for new equipment.
Hmm.
The owners of our arcade had gone to a trade show, coincidentally in Chicago, and met with a manufacturer and said, "Hey, we would love to test new equipment." They found out this was a thing, right? So we got this pinball machine, this newfangled style pinball machine at our location, and it was a nightmare. It was having all kinds of problems. So once I got the phone number to the factory, I called every day. Like,
Mm.
okay, here's what happened last night. This is how you need to fix it. And they eventually sent the programmer and the designer to our town, flew them down to come and check it out, like see what was going on. And that I met those guys and it was like, okay, so these guys come from the place where this stuff gets made. this could be an opportunity. And I remember I skipped school for a day. I was going to be the driver. Like I went out to the airport to get them. I drove them around. We had two locations, so I drove them all day. And finally, like by the end of the day, I just got up. I figured out the two guys. One was really quiet guy. The other was super outgoing, loved everything. And I finally said, okay, here's my shot. Before they left, I go, dude, I want to work at the video game factory. And he goes, come on up, man. I'll get you a job. And here I was 17 years old. And like a week later, I drove up to Chicago on my own, 17, driving to Buffalo Grove on 294, like
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, like going, I don't even know these people. Like I'm going to stay with this guy and his wife, and on the promise he's going to get me a job, and he actually scored me a job. So the day after high school, I came to Chicago and kind of made my way doing that. So the everything started changing at that point,
Got it.
and I had gone during that same time. I had planned to go to Indiana University because they had a great medical program,
Hmm.
and my parents and I went for like a college visit, and they went on the pre-med sort of tour, and I went on the computer science tour because I started like thinking, I should go see what they have there. And my dad was like, why did you go somewhere
Yeah.
else?
What's
Yeah,
computer
what's
science?
what's happening? Yeah. Indiana didn't know that either.
Yeah. Well,
Spoiler alert, they
I
didn't really
was,
know that.
yeah, I was a few years younger than you, but even when I went to school in 1996, the fall of '96, I went for engineering initially,
Yeah.
and I got thrown in my first computer science course, and I was like, "What is this?" Like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, even in 1996, I mean,
Yeah, they still didn't really know, right?
Mark Andreessen had just left there like two
It
years
just left U
before
of
me.
I.
Yeah, he had just left, and Mosaic and Netscape. I
Yeah,
remember I going on Netscape for the first time because it was on the school computers and stuff
right.
like that. I'm like, what is this sorcery?
Exactly, exactly.
But anyway, yeah. So I get it. At the time, computer science, was much different than it is today.
Yeah, and then, just I grew up in Indiana, so when I grew up, it was like, okay, Indiana or Purdue.
Hmm.
Those were your choices. Or Indiana, Purdue at Fort Wayne. I was like, I'm not going there. So I always wanted to go to Indiana. They won national championships. There's a big thing there. Bobby Knight was there. So I had this whole Indiana thing. But then I called an audible because of everything that was going on with, you know, games and computers, and ended up at Purdue. Like literally late in the game, drove down to Purdue to like, please let me in, even though I missed all the deadlines because I need to be in engineering. And yeah, so I ended up whole different story, but I ended up at Purdue my freshman year. Like, what in the world am I doing at Purdue?
Hmm.
I hate Purdue. Sorry, Purdue fans.
So are you Hoosier fan to this day, or
Oh
are you
yeah,
a Purdue?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I'm a
gotcha.
Hoosier fan. Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. That was a brief point in time when
So you ended up at Purdue in engineering or computer science?
engineering. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so I wasn't because of my late audible. I ended up in industrial engineering,
Hmm.
which they said, "Oh, no problem. Just just
Give it a year.
well, you can transfer into engineering."
Yeah.
Well, so I think Purdue at the time was like on a 5-point scale. I think you had to have a 4, 8, or better to transfer. Didn't know that detail.
Yeah.
Well, I went to my first chemistry class, like at Purdue, my first lecture. I'm like, I ain't getting a 4.8. It's like, there's no way. Purdue's hard. That was a hard school. The
Yep.
teachers were tough. And I was like, there is no way that's happening. So I was in for a transfer pretty quick. Yeah.
Got it.
I saw the writing on the wall. I was like, this is going to be way too difficult.
Got it.
Yeah.
But that allowed you to pursue academically what you really love to do. So then, did you
Yeah.
stay? Did you go right into the industry
Well,
then?
no, so again, backing up, that was kind of moving forward, but backing up, that first summer I worked at Williams. I came to work at Williams Electronics in 1983, and that first summer, now they let me in to like Willy Wonka's factory. So I was there. My job was in the service department. It was the best place I could be. I answered an 800 number and told people how to fix their games because that's what I knew how to do. That was my day job. My night job was seeking out every engineer that I could find that was there at night, which most of them were. Like
Right.
all the designers and programmers would basically sleep all day and work at night. This was back in, those crazy computer days.
Yep.
So I would just hang out with these guys and just add value any way I could, and befriended some of them, and they really started teaching me like, this is what you need to know. Or they were kind of showing me what they knew.
Hmm.
Not really teaching me how to do it, but I was I was smart enough to go, okay, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Those are big black holes, and I need to figure that out. So um, having that exposure was really important. But the crazy thing was, and one day my phone rang at my desk during the day, and it was the vice president of pinball. And this guy, he had to be a million years old when I was there in '83. Like really old guy, had designed pinball from the 1940s, you know, all the way through the war and all the way through to whenever. And he said, "Hey," he said, "young man," he goes, "I understand you like pinball." And he was smart because I was hanging around the pinball guys and interested in their job. And I knew, I wanted to know how those worked as well. He goes, "I want to take you to lunch." And it's this old, Polish guy, kind of had an accent. He had a big giant Cadillac. He's kind of going with grandpa. He takes me to lunch and just wanted to know what I was all about. Because he was like trying to get, this guy loved the fact that young people were interested in a very old sort of art form. But specifically, he said, what are your plans? And I told him, I said, well, I'm, supposed to go to school in the fall. I said, but, it's pretty sweet here. Like, I'm thinking this is the job I want to have. I think I want to stay here and work and not go to college. And he said, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Honestly. And he goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, you go to school. He goes, because if you don't do it now, you'll never do it.
Yeah.
And it's super important. And it's so important, he goes, that I will guarantee you your job when you're done with college if you complete your 4 years. So that was a really important piece of advice. Now, I have a father who had a PhD in, he knew school and he couldn't convince me, to go to school. But this guy spoke into my life at that particular point.
Yeah.
And I actually went to that guy's 100th birthday.
Wow.
Like a few several years ago, but it's crazy how much influence he had, over so many things. And again, he was in his probably 70s, still working, and but I just thought that was really important for me because I probably would have made a decision to delay school, and it was important for me to go, even though leaving Willy Wonka's factory was really hard.
Yeah.
And then going to school to learn, but it did make me realize there were all these people where I could try to, get this information and what that time was all about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
College is really a time for, you should be seeking out and asking questions. And that was important.
Yeah.
That was important. That was an important part of my journey.
Absolutely. And then did you intern more or did you?
Yeah, every summer.
Okay.
I came back every summer, every break. I would go up there to work. Like I literally didn't I did go on spring break, but like Christmas, I'd go home for Christmas and then come right up to Chicago. And I just wanted to be at the game factory and be involved. And so that was super positive. Although, during that time was when video games crashed. So my second summer, the company that I worked at was like literally laying off people every pay.
Why? When did they crash? Why did they crash?
1984?
Kind of post Atari?
No, this was like when the Nintendo came, the first Nintendo NES came out.
Okay.
People started playing some good video games in their homes and they stopped. There was a lot of garbage too, like, a lot of companies were jumping in the video game business and creating garbage that people were buying, and it just kind of got
saturated,
overdone, right? Everybody's like, video games, who cares anymore? I got Super Mario. I don't need to go to an arcade.
Yeah.
So, and I think companies were making some pretty poor design decisions at that point. But yeah, the whole market kind of tanked. And, I was in this whole situation where I had a summer job and salaried guys were getting laid off left and right in my department. And I'm like, if I get laid off from my summer dream job, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
And little did I realize, $5 an hour, no benefits. I was pretty safe.
Yeah.
And I actually did things,
Yeah.
I actually worked. So,
oh man,
I didn't figure that out till later.
But you stuck with it, through and through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm trying to think of the earliest point there. You said you were what, 8 or 9, years old the first time you started tinkering around with them?
With games?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say more probably around 12 or something like that I really started tinkering with them. But they were around when I was around 8 is when they sort of came out. And then, they were sort of mysterious for a while, like Pong. Pong was around. The Atari had made Pong for the home, and some guys had that. We had no money when I was growing up. So like that Atari VCS with the cartridges came out. It was way too expensive. You know,
Yeah.
there was no way we were getting one of those. So
Yeah.
yeah, we got like the Kmart version of Pong at some point. Like, you know, when it came down, when it was like
Yeah,
$14.99.
yeah, yeah. I remember.
When it first came out, it was like, you know, $80, and then it was like $14.99.
Now it's like $30 for like a whole like
Oh, dude, yeah,
100 games
yeah,
preloaded on a thing that you plug in the TV.
right,
Um, I mean, certainly pursuing what you love. I mean, you've
yeah,
been doing it forever. I mean, which it leads to the second
never
point
stopped. Yeah,
about staying curious because again, I'm a consumer of video games, right? I was born in 1978, so like I remember we had an Atari kind of, but like not a lot of games.
yeah,
And then Nintendo, when it did come
oh
out,
yeah,
to your
yeah,
point, was like, I was like at the perfect age.
right,
I was at the perfect age for two things. Number one, Nintendo coming out, and number two, Michael Jordan being
right,
Chicago
coming
Bulls.
out.
Yeah, yeah, like
Right.
I mean, it was literally like the perfect timing.
Well, you asked
Um,
if I was still an Indiana fan.
yeah,
Well, I'm a basketball fan. So when I got here, when I graduated college and got here, that's when Michael's a year young or a year older than I am.
okay,
So he came out like a year before I got here.
got it.
You know, not saying there's any connection,
Yeah, I
but
got it.
I got to experience the Jordan era like I was switching away from college, and I was totally, you know, just enamored with
Yeah,
that.
just wrapped. Oh,
So I didn't pay attention to Indiana anymore. I was all Bulls at that time.
yeah, all in.
All
Nice.
in.
But I mean, everything has changed so much over the years. Like, how was that? I mean, because I do want to distinguish a little bit. There's the
Mm.
in-home games,
Yeah, we
right?
call that consumer.
Consumer,
Yeah,
and then there's
arcade.
arcade
Yeah.
or experiential places,
Yeah,
Dave and
location
Buster's,
based. I think
location based,
nowadays the term's location based entertainment. It's,
location based. Okay,
yeah,
and you've primarily worked on the location based
always, yeah.
stuff. Always that stuff.
Never done consumer.
Got it. So, I mean, that's a business conversation,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
On a multitude of levels. Like, how do you compete in that way? But it's also just, you know, again, I'm a consumer, but over the course of time, I was the kid that, you were at the bowling alley and there was a little arcade room, or there was, a hotel that had, an arcade room, or, things like that. And then, just over the course of time, things evolved. Now you
Right.
had, now that, the Dave and Buster's of the world, or the Pinstripes, or the, whatever these places are,
Right.
they're huge gaming centers that are
Huge.
really kind of more geared towards adults than kids, in some ways.
Yeah, somewhat.
I guess it's kind of time of day, but like the games are, I guess I would say are, some of them are, uh, like some of them have more like of a adult, like, I don't know. Like I go to Dave and Buster's, there's games that clearly are maybe a little bit more kid driven. I don't know. Maybe I'm not.
Yeah. No, no, I think there's a mix. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely picking the venue. Certainly Dave and Buster's is going to skew. They all have target demographics, right?
Right.
And Dave and Buster's definitely skews towards that, you know, 24 to 34-year-old, you know, wants to watch sports, you
Yeah.
know, wants to drink beer, wants to eat wings or something like that. That's definitely their demographic. Now, that was their original demographic, but now, you know, sort of families start coming and things like that, so you see more of that. But more like you go to Main Event, which would arguably is a Dave and Buster's clone, but it's really not. Like
Okay.
they have bowling, they do more family oriented things. They have like a high ropes course, or teams course, or whatever they call it, like up in the air. Adults aren't doing that, right?
Yeah.
It's only going to be kids that are going to be strapping themselves in and running around,
Right.
so it's very kid oriented.
Yep.
So you kind of have to go to the chain and sort of feel it out,
Yeah.
you know.
So how do I mean, but throughout that continuum, again, like just thematically around like staying curious, like, is it you're forced and challenged to for competitive reasons to um, continue to innovate, or is it more so like, well, how can we take it to the next level? In terms of
Right.
like a experience or something like that. Like even now today, like I'm sure that a new challenge is this whole like meta universe kind of
Right.
concept,
Sure.
virtual reality, let's call it, right? That you guys, I'm sure, are thinking through, or what does this mean for us?
Right.
That kind of thing. Um, but has that been hard to continue to be like, oh man, now I got to reinvent myself again? Now I gotta, or is that exhilarating, much like it always has been?
You know, it's such a great question. It's such a great question because, you know, again, I don't know how much of it is just makeup. I do think I do think I'm a bit ADD. Like before there was ever that term, you know, I'm always fascinated by bright flashing lights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I love to see cool things,
Yep.
right? Like, um, do you ever watch the SpaceX stuff when they launch the rockets?
I have, yeah.
Have you ever seen when the rocket
When
like
they land
comes
again.
back? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't that get you going like, how the heck
Yeah.
do they like how does that rocket come, you know, it's a straight up rocket. How does it, you know, maneuver down? I love like seeing innovation and how people do things and that absolutely does like drive me to try either integrating that or solving that a different way or, you know, and I think video games are much of that. And in our business, we always say we're in the hits business. Okay. You make a game, if nobody plays it, it's a short trip for that game. Like
Yeah.
you're either like at the top of the earnings list or you're duking it out with 20-year-old games and why should I buy your game because I already have a game that earns that much money
Mm.
and gets that much you know, attention. So it really does become how can you draw attention to presumably people that are, you know, are enamored with bright flashing lights and
Yeah.
things like that, right? There's a whole bunch of people that are like me that like to go into a game room and be entertained. I mean, if you go to Las Vegas, there's a lot of people looking at bright flashing, you know, machines and stuff. And so we're really trying to attract people with what we do. Um, but it is a challenge because I kind of will go into a Dave and Buster's and just look at it and like, okay, how do I stand out here? Like I look at this, all this stuff that's going on. If I create something, what's going to make you walk in that room and go, oh, that looks cool, you
Mm.
know? So that's kind of what drives. I feel like that's what drives us a lot.
Yeah.
And then, okay, that's a problem. Now solve it.
Right.
And so that's the fun part.
So is that in, I mean, I'm sure there's multiple like layers to it, but it's the design element of how it's shaped, how
Yeah,
it stands out visually. Just, you're walking through the place. Whoa, what's that all about?
right.
Or whatever. Then there's the content side of it, I would
Yeah.
imagine too. You
Oh,
know what
yeah.
I mean? So
Once you got them,
yeah,
once you're attracted to the game, now how do you keep them?
right.
That's the second problem,
Yeah,
right?
just insert more coins or whatever.
Yeah, but it's you know it's more than that. I think for me, you know, we did some work like somebody approached us at one point to do some work in the gambling business, like gaming, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, that doesn't intrigue me. As we did, I go, this is not intriguing because it's too simple.
Hmm.
You know, it's like it's just gambling. Gambling has its own sort of like it's a numbers game, and you know, you're not really entertaining anybody. It's just feeding on a certain impulse, and so we never pursued that because I just thought it wasn't that challenging.
Hmm.
You know, it's I want to do something that the challenge is, you know, I want to offer something that's entertaining. I'm
Yeah.
not just trying to like, you know, pander. So we want to create something that truly is entertaining, you know, and
Yep.
truly is something that you'll walk away and go, wow, that was really fun. You know, that
Yep.
was that was a good time. I enjoyed it. So you know, that definitely drives us as well. We're not just, you know, trying to create my goal is not to just manufacture more arcade boxes. You
Yeah.
know, my goal is to create something that's worthy of being manufactured and people actually, you know, enjoy.
Right. And you're creating an experience,
Right.
and
Yeah.
creating, like I remember, I don't know if this was one of your games or not, but I remember with one of my daughters years ago in their plan, I think it was a Jurassic Park game or
Yeah.
whatever.
That's
You
ours.
got you got the dinosaurs,
Right.
jumping at you and whatever. And I don't even know how long we stayed in there.
Yeah.
Like definitely more, yeah, sure, we'll continue going kind of
Right.
thing because it was an awesome experience,
Right.
and it was just so cool. The visuals were awesome, and I guess that's what you're saying is that
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of a philosophy, right? Like if you think of you know, and it's kind of getting off the curious part, but I think it's all intertwined is like, you know, we've chosen a philosophy of how we create product that, you know, looking at product, there are definitely cheaper ways to do it and you know faster ways to do it, but we're very much about crafting an experience that's meaningful. So we take the time, you know, we take the time to maybe find the right license or craft an experience around that license that is going to be long standing.
Yep.
Like if somebody buys one of our products, we want that person to have it be valuable to their business, because ultimately if we provide those kind of products, then we're going to have healthy customers and we can provide products for a long time. And that's kind of what, remember when you asked about the crash of 1984?
Yeah.
It was, as one of our good friends in the industry says, it was a lot of bad food. Like these customers were buying a lot of bad food and they got sick. And we don't want to do that. We want to create, even if our company creates it or a competitor creates it, as long as it's good, I don't care. As long as it's good for the buyer of the equipment, which in our case wouldn't be a person in their home. This is going to be a businessman.
Right.
He's going to buy our equipment and he needs to make a business out of it, right? He has a P&L on that equipment. He wants a return on his investment. If I can return his investment in 12 weeks, that's winning for him, because after that, it's all gravy, and that's a great business model for him and allows him to have a livelihood. So those are the kind of problems we solve for. Now, of course, I've learned this over years and years. At first, I was just making games, made tons of mistakes, because I didn't understand what the actual problem was.
Yeah.
So even though it's creating games, which sounds fun, I don't know. Do you know who Nolan Bushnell is? He started Atari.
Oh yeah.
He was the guy that brought Pong. He's like the godfather of video games, or the grandfather of video games, or whatever. He had this great quote. He goes, it takes just as much time and money to make a bad game as it does to make a good game. So, that's a kind of a mantra that, we want to make good decisions. And so you have to know what your target is and what the problem is to solve. But it's all about decision making and that curiosity, like how do we do this right? How do we make this work? So in many different disciplines as well.
Yep. So interesting. And just to think about how it's evolved and that the way you interact with the game has changed too, right? So where when I was growing up, it was just like the stand-up games with the circular things, and then now you're getting inside of things, or I think we talked about like Big Buck Hunter with the it's got the little shotgun thing,
right? Yeah.
Next to the game or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, just constantly like creating and coming up with different ways for people to experience it.
Yeah.
Is a lot of fun, I imagine.
I think so too. I think, and one of our big issues to solve for is, okay, we have to create things that you won't get in your home.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a PlayStation or Xbox or Quest or whatever, what are we doing that's different than that? A reason, it's just a little too expensive. Probably people aren't going to buy this, but they want to experience it. Like, with VR, we just create a product that is, we took one of our motorcycle racing games and updated it and then brought it into, it has a VR headset now. So you sit on the bike and you put the VR helmet on. And it's like, literally like the sensation of speed increases by like 4x.
Yeah.
It's like amazing. It's like, whoa, this is pretty intense. So, and that was, we just showed that last week. It's amazing.
Well, I was going to, that's got to be the new frontier, those, games like that.
I don't know if it's frontier or it's just a piece of the puzzle. I think the VR helmet is bad. Ultimately, this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg is doing nothing that hasn't been done already.
Yeah.
I do think that AR is not VR, but I think AR will ultimately be,
What is that? And I'm fully with you on the whole.
Yeah.
Living in a simulated world thing.
Well, if you and I are not going to sit in a living room and enjoy the football game together with helmets on, right?
Yeah.
Or how about you and all your friends?
So what is
it's just weird.
Yeah, right. So what is AR?
AR is more, they call it augmented reality, where like you would have a pair of glasses that you would have on that I would see you, but I would see like all kinds of information about, or whatever, like you have hair or like something like that crazy. But I really think that that's more, it's lightweight, but it's engaged with the world.
Yep.
Not removed from. I don't think it's natural to remove yourself from the world. So I think there's a disconnect there. That like VR just one issue is 10% of the population just gets sick when they put the helmet on.
Yep.
Okay, that's not good, right?
Mhm.
That's not.
Yeah, I mean, we got one of the Oculuses last year,
Yeah,
and I had it on for 15 minutes or
yeah.
whatever,
It
and
makes you feel weird,
yeah,
right?
and makes yeah, it's almost like you've been on a boat for hours or something like that.
Right. And let's think about Dave and Buster's. They serve food. Do
Yeah,
you want to put something on? Do you want your customers putting something on their head that makes them not want food?
yeah,
Probably not.
no,
Like, so there are issues with the technology. Um, and it's kind of like if you look back at, you remember before the iPhone, right? That the
flip.
Apple Note or whatever it was called. It was the thing Steve Jobs made that was a handheld device
Okay,
that you could do stuff on, but it had a stylus and
okay,
you
like a
wrote on
Palm
it
Pilot kind of thing.
before Palm.
Okay,
It was Apple made this thing and it was a failure. And there's a famous thing about it that Steve Jobs said, the stylus was the problem. Like you didn't, writing on it was the problem. And so, years and years later, come back to the iPhone, which is basically that device,
hmm.
now with some added technology, but reformed and with no stylus. And all of a sudden now it's, this major success, something they took that was a failure. Just because something is not working doesn't mean it's totally
Right,
without merit. It's
right.
just maybe, something slightly off. It's amazing how like you just tweak a couple things and all of a sudden it's like, oh,
Yeah, I remember when the iPhone came out, and I was like, the idea of the little keyboard, and I'm like, that's never gonna work. I got
yeah.
too thick of thumbs, or you know
Right.
what I mean? Like, it's never gonna work, and
Yeah, now you're a slave to it.
yeah, yeah. Now it owns me.
It owns
Owns me.
everyone. Yeah, it's
Um,
no question.
oh, that's great. Well, staying curious, and then last one I wanted to hit on was just leading through challenging times, and the one that stood out to me was just because, it's around the time that we were probably getting to know one another was Corona or the COVID
Right.
era, where all of a sudden it was like all orders were stopped, kind of thing. You got to run a business,
Yeah.
but you've been doing this for long enough too that you've seen the early 2000s, '08, '09, and even prior to that, even going back to, like you were saying, 1984, there was a huge disruption. So I mean, when you think about those times, and you could pick any or all of those or whatever, sort of leading through, those periods of time, like,
Right.
what are the things that you've learned that when you're really in the eye of the storm and it's bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What do you need to do? I mean,
Phew, that's a good one too. And again, you kind of learn by going through these things, like, right? You learn what you can do and what you can't do, and like what's in your control and not in your control. I certainly believe, I mean, you and I know each other pretty well. My faith is very strong,
right.
and I think that's key.
Yep.
The key thing in COVID was, in how I'm going to deal with the people that work for me.
Right.
What's the most meaningful part about this? Look, people were scared,
Yep.
and my job as a leader of our company was to not be scared and not make everybody more scared, and how can I provide security, and the last thing I want to do is like, oh, sorry guys, no money, everybody, see you later,
Yeah.
and we made some tough decisions early on where we were not going to do that. We were going to do what we had to do, um, as long as we could, I mean, we were gonna keep everybody employed and, just keep soldiering on because it was just so. COVID was one of those ones that was, to me, I like looked at it, I go, okay, none of this makes sense right now. Like
Yeah.
everybody's freaking out. Nothing makes sense. We need to just like, okay, keep the ship going straight ahead,
Yeah.
and see what happens. Hopefully we don't run aground. Um, so that was COVID. I always had a strong, just a strong feeling that this would be over. I did have one irrational fear though during COVID, and this is the one thing that one time I was just like, oh no, and this is would anybody? This was after my first trip to the grocery store.
Yep.
Okay, I don't know when your first trip to the grocery store was, but
Early,
I
because
think we
my
all,
wife made me go. Yeah.
but we all remember it pretty well,
Yeah.
right? Like gloves, masks,
Yep.
people, like you're looking at everybody, and I literally had this irrational fear. I go, what if nobody wants to go to a Dave and Buster's and like grab a steering wheel of a driving game that somebody just sat in? Like what if that, like, or doesn't want to stand shoulder to shoulder to,
Right. Ever
ever
again.
again? What if
Yeah.
what if people don't want to do that again. Like they're just so freaked out that they're never going to do it again. That was the only irrational fear. But then, as you start talking to people, it's like, you realize maybe, you know, maybe people have a different view of this and stuff. But
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's probably, a sub segment, of folks that are still very fearful. And,
yeah,
I had those thoughts too, just around like, is our lives, sort of permanently changed in that way, which is, terrible, to think
yeah.
about that.
And I think there are some. I mean, there are definitely some effects that are long-standing for people, but over time, I think you can see the mass now starting to you know, get back into a normal cadence and things like that. But yeah, that was COVID obviously was just so wild from a business perspective.
Yeah.
We went from John, we had orders booked, factory booked to zero
Yeah.
in 3 days. Like
Yeah.
everybody closed, no everything stopped, nobody's paying anything, orders canceled. Like it's like, what? And add on top of that, my oldest son had just decided to switch careers and leave his job and come and work for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well,
Welcome.
I was like, the good news is it doesn't really get much worse than zero revenue.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
can only go up from here. So
So I think to summarize it, as challenging as it was, as dark as it was, you felt like as a leader, your job was to not be fearful,
right.
charge forward. Hey, the day is always darkest before the dawn, right? And it's pretty dark out right now,
It's pretty dark, yeah. And I'm
and
not gonna let people know how fearful I may be. This could be right or wrong. I don't know if this is the proper response, but the way I'm made up, and I've gone through some stuff with my business before. Certainly the first 5 years starting the business. I mean, there were times where it was like, I don't know how we're going to pay people,
yep,
but I never let on, how difficult that part was, like, you know, what the bank account said or whatever. I felt it was my job that if people work for me, they need stability so they can work.
yep,
They don't need to know all my fears and all. Yeah, that's my job, right?
yep,
I'm leading the company. If push comes to shove, then I have to make the tough decisions. But I always wanted to provide a place that people were free of that. If they committed to work for me, then I needed to make sure that they were safe in that environment
yep,
and secure in that environment. And I've always worked towards that.
yep,
Sometimes the right way, sometimes the wrong way, I think. And how that looks and how that works has changed over time. And maybe that's me maturing in my faith, like in how I see the world and everything. But I've always stood by that. That was my job as the leader of the company. And again, that may be right or that may be wrong, but it's worked. It's worked for us. And there are times where I don't hide anything from anybody. There have been times where it's, here's the conversation, guys. This is where we stand,
yep,
and are you sticking with me or are you not? And COVID was definitely one of those times.
yep,
I mean, we had to get to a point where, we thought maybe it would, we're kind of everybody was prognosticating about when this was going to be over, right? And that's what we did on the daily was like, what do you think the weather is today, the COVID weather? And,
yeah,
we had at some point as a leadership group figured out, you know what, it might not be till 2022 before we actually start getting revenue neutral. Like
yeah,
we might be losing money until 2020, last half of 2022. And if that's the case, we need to tighten our belts and, we need to ask people to take a pay cut.
hmm,
And that, I'd never had to ask for that in 20, at that time, 25 years of running a company. I never had to ask people to take a pay cut. And it was the worst day of my life. Like
yeah,
to, put this ask out there. And literally, and I did it as a blanket statement to everybody on Discord because nobody was meeting, and which was worse. It was
yeah,
like, I'd rather deliver this news in person. But then I got on the phone with every single person afterwards to talk about what that looked like for them and, what their feeling was on it. And to a person, everybody was like, we're with you on this. We
yeah,
get it. Like we understand what's happening. And that was a humbling day. That was
yeah,
just like, for me as a business owner, I was like, I've never had to do this before, and I hated it. I was
Yeah.
like, I went home and Leslie was like, you look terrible.
Yeah.
I go, that was because that was one of the worst days of running a business.
Yeah.
But you know what? It only lasted for the salary cut only lasted for like 3 or 4 months. We were able to restore and then actually, get everybody back to where they were. So,
Right.
thankful for that. But those were tough decisions.
Well, it's because of that solidarity that you want to show. It's because you want it to be a safe place where people can feel like they can be
Right.
creative,
Yeah.
take risks, try this out, like whatever. That because of that stability that you continue to bring, you having to go through that
Right.
was a crack in that stability, and there's like a, uh, that comes with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard.
Oh, it's horrible.
'Cause, yeah,
It was horrible. I definitely lost sleep going, knowing that this was coming and how we were going to navigate this. But
right,
I was super thankful of everybody's response. It was an awesome response from everybody,
yeah,
and everybody stuck with us.
yeah.
We did have a
Well,
couple guys leave, but there were guys that had just started with the company, and they're like,
yeah,
"What's going on here?
yeah.
I'm out." But it was my long standing people and everybody that had been through a few cycles with us
Yeah.
were all in.
I'm built a lot like that too, in terms of like trying to be foundational, calm, cool,
Right.
collected, all that kind of stuff. And that when you talked about that being hard, I'm like, oh man, that would be terrible for me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you're not worried about yourself, you're worried about other people.
Truly. Yeah.
Like
Truly.
truly, you know what I mean? And that's what kills you is that you're so worried about them that
Yeah.
you don't want to disappoint them.
Yeah.
It's
It's a weird
crazy.
thing. But, in running a business, I think that's super key is that how do you position yourself as the leader of the business?
Yeah.
Of course, we all see the Hollywood version of, people that come in and, boss everybody around, but that's not how I lead my business. My job is how can I make your job, how can I make it easy for you to do your job?
Yep.
I don't want your job necessarily to be easy, but I want to take down any obstacle, you know, looking at whoever is working in the company, what can I do to make you get your job done better, easier, faster? So, that's the position I take. It's a servant leadership
Yep.
style,
Yep.
and yeah, it's definitely not without its stressful moments.
Yep.
Sometimes you want to take the reins yourself and do it, but that's not going to develop anybody.
Yep.
That's not gratifying for anyone.
Right.
And again, yes, we make products. I've always enjoyed the journey of it all, and I've always enjoyed the people that I work with, and how that all looks from a daily standpoint. So that's the whole undercurrent of all of it. Yes, I make video games for a living, but truly, I really enjoy the people I work with and the workplace. And if it's, I ended up leaving to go on my own because the workplace that I was part of creating, I don't think it was by my fault. I think it was the fault of success and some greedy individuals in charge that created a toxic place
Mm.
where I literally, even though we were making games, I was going to work every day just going, I just am not enjoying myself.
Mm.
And when I left to start my company, you could make a good argument. Certainly, you could look at the financials of it and go, you're making a really dumb decision, George. You
Yeah.
should not leave, where you're at to go do what you're going to do. But I literally couldn't go to work there anymore.
Yeah.
I felt I was in an evil place. I was like, it's just a burden to be here. So that's what made me jump out on my own, which is, now that I look back, why wouldn't I have made that decision?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's so obvious now.
Yeah, it's so obvious. But for the first 5 years, it was not obvious. It
Yeah.
was a daunting challenge. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you never know what's on the other side of yes, right?
Right.
And, that's part of my journey too, left Wall Street to go work at, the church. People were looking at me like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like you just had your third kid,
Yeah.
just moved into this beautiful home, like, what are you doing? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know, this is what I'm supposed to do. And, looking back on it, that was, I mean, breaking that all down, it was just the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Right. I've heard you tell that story
Was
before.
me saying yes when it made absolutely no sense for me
Right.
to say yes. Was the only reason I'm sitting here with you,
Yeah.
doing a podcast,
Yeah.
about, small to mid-sized business stuff. You know what I mean? I wasn't doing that at the time, but
No.
like I have a lot of people approach me that are like thinking about starting their own, business. And,
Right.
some people I might, encourage to stay one way, but most of the time it's somebody that's got a good idea, smart, good connections, driven by it, all the things in the recipe book that you need to be successful as
Right.
an entrepreneur. And I always am just like, just do it, man.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to gamble on anybody, gamble on yourself,
Right. And
you know?
especially do it while you're young.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy, right? It
Yeah,
takes, even though it's great, it takes a lot of energy.
it does. It does. You got to push through.
You do have to push through. But you look back and you're like, okay, why, well, I think I did mine all at the right time, but I definitely made lots of mistakes. I mean, I clearly made mistakes in different areas, but I've grown personally. I don't think I would have grown the way I did, or had the relationships I had if I stayed where I was. Well, this is a clear one. The company I was at was a public company.
Hmm.
They are literally gone.
Hmm.
Like they are bankrupt, zero, you know, everybody out. And it's like, wow, when I left, I knew things were going to go down eventually, but I didn't think they'd go that far down.
Wow.
So it was the right move. Um, but yeah, it was a lot of crazy times.
Yeah.
Well, there's a great quote. So I love to read about people's stories. Like I'm a big testimony guy. I mean,
Yep.
maybe you've heard me say that before.
Yep.
I mean, there's nothing like somebody's story, right?
Yep.
Like what made them, and especially when it's somebody that achieved quite a bit of stuff. I love to read that. And I loved that Steve Jobs book.
Yep.
Like I don't know if you read
I did.
the
Yep.
Walter Isaacson one.
Yep.
Fascinating, right? I mean, somebody writing knowing they're going to die is, basically writing their story. And I thought it was very authentic. But there's one part in there where Steve Jobs talks about, in order to get somewhere, right? Like to achieve something, great or change, that's life changing, you have to take a leap of faith.
Yeah.
There is no history on it. There's
Yeah.
there's no way to read history and go, okay, I know what's going to happen when my foot touches this part.
Right.
But he says that he said it has to be faith. You have to go on something. And
Yep.
I think that might be the biggest hurdle for people that don't
Yep.
change. They won't take that leap.
Yep.
Because you might flame out.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to do that.
Well, especially, you mentioned people when they're young or whatever. And I think what's behind that, and that's why even when I did my move, and probably when you did your move, it made even less sense. Um, but the older you get, the presumably the more money you're making, right?
Right.
But on top of that, you may have a wife, you may have children, you may have a house, you may have just things that are, they're not going anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Fixed cost.
so the security that job uh, lends to itself,
Right.
like you feel like you're taking this leap. Um, Even if it was just you, it'd be a lot easier. There's always an excuse to not do it,
Right.
in a way, but those are legitimate,
Oh, absolutely.
considerations, right, for people. But um, I've not met too many people that have taken the leap and have been like, man, that was really dumb.
Right. Yeah.
And
Even if
so
you
it's
do
the
fail.
story is always, well, this turned not into exactly what I thought it was going to be, but I'm doing this now and it's way better.
Right.
Or
Yeah. The
whatever
door,
it is.
the path is going to lead you somewhere good.
Right.
And I can't say all that without acknowledging that my wife was, my life partner was also along for the ride. Like
Yeah.
she was always like, yeah, do it. If that's what you think is the right thing to do. I mean,
Yeah.
she was always very much in my corner on the whole thing, even when, we were eating ramen and doing
Yeah.
all those cliche things that you do when you're, setting up your business. She was right along for the ride.
Yep.
And during that time though, even outside of business, amazing things happened that were still to this day I can look back and go, I don't know how that happened. Like there
Right.
were certain times where we made some decisions that we didn't have the money to do certain things, and provision was made to, get this done because it, it was like it was the right decision that we made. But the provision for it was like, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
I just don't understand where that, to this day, I cannot identify,
Right.
and there was actually a great business story that I don't know if I told you the story or not, but there was a point where with one of the games that we make is called Big Buck Hunter, and
Yeah.
it's thankfully
I played it a time or two.
right, and
pretty
it's
fun.
kind of crazy because as a game maker, you always want to make a game that, like, you want to make the hit game, right?
Yeah.
And I watched not my group, but I watched other group like make Mortal Kombat and
Yeah.
things like this, games that became household names. And it's like, that's all my technology under there, and but a different group made it, and I always wanted to like have that one big hit game. Little did I know it would be a hunting game, like, and how it all came about was a whole nother story. But during the course of it, we got across my fax machine one day in my little small business here in Glen Ellen, I got served with a federal lawsuit for trademark infringement, or copyright infringement. No cease and desist letter, no nothing. A full-fledged federal lawsuit in the court of Dallas, Texas. And I
Okay.
was like, whatever circuit that is. And I'm like, oh crap. Like, I called my attorney. I'm like, he goes, well, you can't not respond to it.
Just
And
put that one in the
basically, can we just worry about this later? So that lawsuit was alleging that we had stole some imagery from a book from a particular person that basically takes wildlife pictures and publishes books and gets copyrights. Well, as I did my due diligence with my employees, truly one of our artists scanned pictures out of a book, because this is right when scanners showed up, and she didn't really know, that this was not a legal practice, and we were just a small business, not really on point with what this art was being created, and we did it, and at some point we got to a point where we met with the other party and didn't go to court. The judge was like, you guys should meet and talk this out. And I sat with the guy who owned the picture and said, yeah, we did it. I'm not going to say we didn't, and I'm not saying you shouldn't get paid. I said, what I'm telling you is what you want, I don't have, and you're just going to put 12 people out of work.
Yeah.
I said, so let's figure something out that makes you whole. Probably hurts for me a little bit, but how can we move forward? And the guy looks at me and he's like, nobody's ever said that to me before. Like, nobody's ever admitted. And I was his 20th federal lawsuit.
Wow.
Yeah, this guy he makes his bones on that. And
he likes looking for his pictures elsewhere.
Yeah, right. So yeah, he goes to Walmart's and Bass Pro and all that stuff and sues these companies. But anyway, so there was an amount that we had due over like 5 years time or something. Like, we came up with a payment plan, and it came down to it was a large amount, but it was reasonable over that time. And yes, it was going to hurt, and yes, it was going to, I would not probably make as much as I needed to make in those given years. But after it was all over, and it was very stressful, after it was all over, we had been licensing our game from manufacturer to another manufacturer, because at the time, I didn't have the capability for that.
Right.
Now we're a manufacturer. Then we were just creators of games, needed somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I started looking at our books, and I wasn't the one in control of the books. I had a partner that was doing that, but I just got curious about, now let's see what we're getting paid by this manufacturer against our agreement. And I discovered that they hadn't been paying us correctly. Like, I was like, is this right? Like, literally, they've been paying us way too low for what they were supposed to by the product category they were making. So I wrote it all up. I presented it to their CFO, and he goes, oh, you're right. We have not been doing this correctly. We'll get you a check right away. And turns out the amount of that check was exactly the amount that I settled on with the copyright infringement case. So I was able to, of course, I didn't pay the guy immediately. I paid out over 5 years. But how crazy that was all after.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh my gosh, we went through all that. And the funny part about it was the check was FedEx to us, and it never showed up. And it ended up in another building in my office park. the other company literally took the check out and endorsed it. And it was for a large sum of money.
Yeah.
And, we figured this out. I'm like, what happened to the check?
Oh my gosh.
And they
Now
actually
you
put
got
their
to go through
endorsement
the
stamp on it.
banking system.
Well, no, they
yeah.
didn't try to cash it. We ended up getting to them, but it was very scary
Yeah.
for a second. And so we went through all that, but the fact that we were all of a sudden this provision came, we're like,
Yeah.
can you believe that? Like,
Yep.
all the stress and everything. It was like a year of time. I don't know if you've ever been involved in a lawsuit, but
No, thankfully.
it is just not like, it's not something you want to, it's not something you want to get involved in. It does nothing for your business. Like,
Yeah.
moving forward, it's
A lot
only
of sideways energy.
a lot of energy, and
Ugh.
so many ups and downs during it that were, but like, so something I'd never thought I would ever encounter in my life. And it was just like crazy, but it all ended up fine and we survived. And I mean, from a point of like, I think we're done.
Yeah.
Like, I literally think we're done as a business.
I feel like I got to ask you about, you said the story behind the big buck hunter. Like that. Now I feel like I got to ask you the question because you said something about, well, there's a story behind how that came about.
Big Buck Hunter?
Yeah.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Or
how did you come up with or how did you guys come up with the idea?
A Big Buck Hunter was, oh yeah, there is a story. Actually, that was a sort of a big turning point in the company, because we had been at it for about 5 years. And I really wanted to create games, but we were more getting into, like, just to keep payroll going. We were more doing like contract work. Like I said,
Yeah.
we had done casino games. We had basically got a contract to create these games, and we could do it.
Yeah.
And it brought money in, so we would do anything we could. And I found I was doing all the work. Like, I was like literally trying to find the business and doing the work at night. And it was, I had two young kids at the time,
Hmm.
and did I have, yeah, three coming. And I got to a point where I was like, told my business partner, I go, this is just not working. Like, literally, and this was right around Christmas. It was Christmas of 1999. And I was like, this is just, it's too hard. And I was ready to wave the white flag and go back to the company I used to work for. Actually, I had already waved the white flag.
Yeah.
And I went back and talked to the company I used to work for, and the person that had basically taken my old job, kind of twice removed. And that guy was like, he goes, "Oh yeah, come on back." And I go, "I just want one thing. I just want our team to stay together." And he's like, "Why would I do that? I'll put everybody where they fit best." I go, "Well, why would I have everybody come back here then to this place? I'll let them get the best job they can get." And I kind of left there just kind of pissed.
Yeah.
And I said, "You know what? Told my partner, I go, this is getting too hard." I go, "I think we need to think about, like, what our next job's going to be, like, whatever
Yeah.
that looks like." So we left on a Friday. We met on a Friday. I went away for the weekend. He went away for the weekend. We are going to agree to meet on Monday and see what we came up with. And my partner was more the accountant type, so he kind of came up with a roll-up plan for, how we were going to, sort of what we would do with what we had and get out of it. And I came back with Big Buck Hunter. It was just revealed to me over the weekend, like, there are these hunting games, like Deer Hunter had come out on the PC, and there were these hunting games, and we had this kind of cool gun shooting technology that we had done. And I'm like, people seem to like hunting.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do that. And we had 10 people at the time, and just came back on a Monday and said, I think we should I got everybody together. I go, I think we should do a hunting game. And everybody agreed, except one guy, and he quit. And secret was, we kind of were happy about that. But
Yeah.
The people that were with me, and I literally cashed out my kind of retirement. I said, we have 3 months worth of money. This was one of those moments where I just laid it on the table.
Oh
I said,
my
we
gosh.
have 3 months worth of money. We have to get whatever it is we're going to do done in 3 months. And hopefully it works. Because if it doesn't, we're all going to go find something else to do.
Wow.
And everybody busted their butt. We had a vision. Like, everybody got it right away. They're like,
Yeah.
we get it. And we made the game. We made a quarter of the game with that money. We put it out on test I don't know if you remember, out in Aurora, there was a place called Pockets. It was like this big massive like sports bar, billiards, and a game room.
Hmm.
And it was like the coolest place, right? It had everything, and it had huge projection screens all over it.
Yeah.
We called them up and we said, "Hey, we got a game we want to put it on tests in your location." And they said, "Oh yeah, bring it over." We rolled it in the afternoon, and guys started. They literally got off the bar and started following it. They saw the deer picture on it, the one that we got sued for, by the way. And they saw the deer picture, and they like right away started playing it. Like, oh, they were like, "This is good." Like this was just the beginnings of it. And we were like, what is happening right now? I mean, it was that hit that I always wanted.
Yeah.
And never really, I mean, it had some good games, I'm not gonna lie. But man, that was one that was just like, we knew right away. And we just sat back at a table all night, and we just, sat with our beer and just watched like people play it over and over again. And we were like, okay, we think we have something. So that was, I mean, we were ready to be done.
Yeah.
And it would have been a whole different story if Buck Hunter wouldn't have come our way.
Wow.
Yeah. So I owe a lot to Buck Hunter, I guess. But it was a very, it was one of those things. You never know, you just pray about stuff and think about things. And I'm that big believer, like, our inspiration, we're inspired by, and outside things, but we don't know when it's going to come. And that's actually going back to the whole curious thing. That's what excites me, because I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know what's going to happen every day.
No,
and
I wish I did.
I find that's the enjoying part. The enjoyable part for me is I don't know what we're going to encounter today. It could be good, it could be bad, but it's going to be something interesting, and we're going to have to deal with it. And I just find that exhilarating, and maybe that's why I do what I do. But
yeah. Well, that's entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. But like you said, it's from your story, you wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those. If you're having that itch where it's like something's not quite right, I need to do this. I think you're right. You just gotta do it.
Yep.
And again, it's not for everybody, but and if everybody in my place was an entrepreneur, I wouldn't have any employees, right?
Well, everybody's got their hat they're wearing.
Right, exactly. Very interesting.
All right. I mean, everything and then some in terms of what I was hoping for. So thank you for sharing a lot of your journey with me and anybody who tunes in to watch and listen.
Well, thank you for listening and even asking me.
Yeah. We do wrap with 3 questions on each episode. Watch out. There's 3, and then maybe a mystery question for you.
All right. Let's do this.
So besides the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast by Third Road Management, any podcasts that you enjoy particularly? If you're not a podcaster, that's okay. You can do a book or something like that.
I'm not a podcaster, but there is one podcast I listen to.
Okay.
And I think you're going to like it.
Okay.
How I Built This.
How I Built This. Yeah. You've heard me say that a few times.
But it's even long before I knew what you were doing. I mean,
yeah.
I honestly think John Peacock turned me onto it.
Probably.
I feel like
I turned him onto it.
Which one did you turn him onto?
I don't remember I don't remember the first one, but there is one with the on Atari.
Oh,
and I have listened to that.
I haven't listened to that one.
Yeah.
This one, I know the one we were on a trip.
Okay.
And he put on the one with the guy who started Patagonia.
Oh, yep.
And he just pushes play and he goes, "You're welcome." So you were the inspiration behind that.
Yeah.
No, I love that. That's exactly what I love to hear, the real story.
Yep.
It's fascinating.
Yes.
Like, and what I think there's a theme, right? Like, people that get into where they ended up is not where a lot of times not where they thought they were going.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think that's the most fascinating part.
Well, and as consumers, we catch on to these ideas, like these businesses, once they've already reached critical mass level.
Right.
But underneath of the surface of all those things is stories just like yours and mine.
Yeah.
That are just like, dude, it was a grind.
Right.
And it did not go well. And and then I pushed all the chips in the middle of the table and it didn't work. And then my, grandfather passed away and I got another, $50,000 and that's the only reason we're here today, or whatever the story is. It's never oh, I just woke up one day and everything went up and to the right,
Yeah.
and so I think those stories are inspiring, and I think stories like yours are, just as much inspiring. You know what I mean? And so, where they focus on companies that are obviously known internationally or at a
Right. Yeah.
minimum, in the across the U.S.
You got to
I
be
think there's
above. You
so
got to be
many.
above like 500 million in
Yeah,
sales.
yeah, yeah. I think,
I've always tried to figure out what the line is.
yeah, yeah.
Like they did the Siete Foods, which I don't know if you know about them, but they're like a
No,
gluten free.
okay,
We eat their chips. Like I was like, okay, they're fairly new. Like their story's really cool.
yeah,
But they're fairly new, and I was like, okay, I'm comparing this to like Cisco. Like,
yeah,
okay, where does it's there is a sales. I think there's a sales threshold. Like,
yes,
first question is, what are your annual sales?
yeah.
That's what I'm guessing.
Second question: best concert you've ever been to?
So I've been to a lot of concerts.
Okay,
Um, love me some concerts.
okay.
But I'm a huge Rush fan,
Oh,
and
okay.
so like from growing up,
Yep.
they're just my era. Like, and
My brother will be very glad to hear that
awesome.
when he listens in. Yeah.
So I've been to a lot of Rush concerts, and I went to one. It was called the Time Machine Tour. It wasn't that long ago, and it was on Northerly Island, summer, outdoor. I I splurged. I went second row,
Yep.
and I'm like, if if you have a favorite band and you haven't seen them up close, spend the money
Yep.
because it was like I literally was like I was that far off the ground the entire concert,
Yep.
and I was like that was amazing.
Yes. There is definitely
Totally worth
a
the bucks.
yes. If you're not in the quality or a quantity aspect of concert going, maybe these days,
No,
go
go quality.
go quality.
Yeah,
Where you can.
yeah.
Which, by the way, I Dad of the Year over here just scored some Taylor Swift tickets
What?
for the high schooler last week.
How'd you do it? I
Um,
heard it was a train wreck.
it
Like,
was a train wreck. It was a lot of patience involved.
yeah.
But yeah, we got them. Nothing crazy in
No, but
terms
it
of,
doesn't matter.
but doesn't matter. They're going. She and her friends are going.
Yeah,
So
maybe she'll be on the podcast.
yeah, there you go. A place that you've been that everybody should visit once, or at least once.
That's another, those are tough. These are tough questions. This is a tough question.
Okay.
Um, and I've traveled a lot, but honestly, I think one of the coolest places that I've been to is Tokyo.
Oh, okay.
If you've ever been there before,
I have not.
it's it's a place. It's kind of like bizarro Manhattan. Like
Okay.
you think you know it.
Yes.
Like when you get there, you're like, "Oh,
Oh, this looks
this is
familiar.
very familiar," and it's totally not familiar. Like when you start picking at it, you're like, I don't know what is going on with this
Yeah.
place, but it's super cool. And if you're like kind of techie, it's like the techie mecca. At least it used to be. I don't know if it's like it I honestly haven't been there since that crazy tsunami that
Oh, right.
that knocked out the nuclear power plant.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw a video of like this airport lounge, like literally the lights like coming down, and I was like, I've been in that lounge,
Oh,
not going back.
yeah.
And radiation, and I was just kind of like, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fantastic place. But there's so many great places around the world.
All right. Last one, mystery bonus question
Awesome.
or bonus mystery question. Given your video game
I love it. This is the box
guy,
with the question mark on it.
yeah. Uh, any favorite, of all your creations or whatever? Any one that is your favorite? I mean, I know you were just
My creations.
yeah.
So this is
Or actually, hold on. Let's go any
yeah, you got
video
to do
game.
that because the weird thing about that is by the time you get done making a video game,
Yeah.
kind of the last thing you want to do is play it. Although
Okay.
Buck Hunter, I love playing, like no question. But my favorite video game of all time is called Robotron. It's a
Robotron. Okay.
yeah, it's an old like early 80s game that was mind-boggling when it came out, and it actually happened to be designed by my business partner now.
Hmm.
Um, and that's probably what led me to Chicago. It was definitely one of those games that was like, what?
Yeah.
How does anybody even conceive like this? How does anybody think of this stuff? I still look at it and marvel because back in the day, I mean, the amount of memory that you had to write a program, I, if you try to compare it to your iPhone screen, I think we've tried to compare this before. It is probably, do you know the little dots on the bottom of the screen when you have like a page, when you turn
Yeah.
pages and it
Yep.
has little 3, 4, 5 little dots?
Yep.
It's not even as much as one of those dots, like in
Wow.
terms of like how much
Memory.
memory it is. And
Wow.
they crafted like this experience that you can play today that's like, how does it do that? Like out of, you know, out of these things. So yeah, that's my favorite.
All
I have
right.
one in my office. I've always had one next to my desk, and yeah,
Very cool. I love it.
I'm a video game guy,
Um,
arcade video game guy.
yeah. Well, like I said, this has been amazing. Thank you for coming and sharing. Um, love it. Appreciate you. And yeah, maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for having me,
Thanks,
John.
George Petro.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.